Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the St. Baldrick's Impact Series. My name is Mariela Castillo, and I'm the Director of Special Events for the Foundation. I'm sitting in for our usual host. I'm excited and thrilled for today's episode because our guest is Michael Fiscus, a St. Baldrick's volunteer who is an out of the box thinker, innovator, and all around inspiration. In 2006, Mike was introduced to the St. Baldrick's Foundation and shaved for the first time in 2007. The following year, he was compelled to kick off his first event and has since blended his skills and resources from working in marketing and business development, along with volunteer development efforts with the American Youth Soccer Organization. For the last 20 years, Mike has focused on building volunteer development opportunities to achieve a positive impact for kids. His focus has been on finding the right volunteers to create a great experience, emphasizing what's in it for the volunteers and giving them opportunities to develop new skills. There are many kinds of volunteers with different motivations, and Mike says we need them all. Michael has worked in the business development and marketing space for more than 30 years, developing ample skills that he shares in abundance with St. Baldrick's. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you so much for having me here today. It's a pleasure. And I guess I got the A team to interview me while Kathleen recovers.
Yes. Thank you, Mike. So you're a 15-year St. Baldrick's leader. You've shaved your head in solidarity with kids with cancer each year. You've served as a volunteer event organizer or VEO, in addition to many, many other roles. In this process, you've raised more than $2.9 million for childhood cancer research, which is extraordinary. What motivated you to help kids with cancer?
It's probably like a lot of folks. It's that impact where you're connected. And some good friends of ours, Jameson and Emily, lost their daughter to cancer. And, as a parent, it's just unfathomable, right? So, when they first introduced me after trying to figure out how they're going through this, they asked me to shave my head, which is the first time you're asked to shave your head is really strange.
Right.
And then once I learned about the foundation and their work and just how much I didn't know, I just felt compelled to jump in and do more. So as we scrambled to put together that first event, it just started on a path that there's been no turning back on.
Wow. That's amazing. So I called you a VEO, but that's a bit of a misnomer. It's probably more accurate festival, but that also seems to underestimate your accomplishments. So tell us a little bit about the unique nature of St. Baldrick's in Romeo, Michigan.
Yeah, so I like to consider myself like a disruptor. So when I put together the first event, it was really with 2 weeks planning. And as we went through that process, light bulbs started going off through the whole thing. And as I talked with people after that, we figured out how we'd make it bigger, because whatever we do, you got to make it 2 to 3 times better the next year.
Oh, yeah.
Keep doing crazy ideas. So that was tying in back to, there was a lot of folks from our community that I knew through AYSO and business owners that we talked with about bringing it to the village. And first year there was out of control to the extent that the fire marshal was really concerned about it, because we had 500 people packed in a 300 person capacity building and hundreds of people stuck outside. And what we discovered is we could go real big. And so then we expanded across town, having multiple stages. And then we had to move into the Romeo Lions had this awesome field house that could hold 1,500 people, 2,000 people. So we moved there and packed that for a number of years. And then eventually we ended up closing down the main street in the village and putting up a giant street-long tent. And it became kind of like this bigger than life thing. And part of that is each year bringing in new volunteers along with seasoned volunteers and trying to find that big idea and whether or not you can pull it off each year. So there's a lot of crazy stuff we've done, whether it was trying to hit 100,000 for the first time, or breaking 100 shavies and then breaking 300 shavies, doing a beer festival. I mean, there's just been so much stuff we've been able to do, but mostly that is just trying to break the mold and see what you can get away with. Obviously staying within the legal parameters of what the foundation wants us to do, but you guys have been so flexible in sort of exercising the things that we could do. And what we did is we grew up from being a village only thing to being Metro Detroit was another year where we wanted to go spread
Wow.
it around, which was a lot of driving. And then there was an opportunity to do it statewide. So it's just, we keep piling on and make it just larger in life. And it's been a blast.
Yeah, I bet. It sounds so incredible. My goodness, I haven't had the opportunity to attend your event, but yeah, I've heard amazing, amazing things, and it's incredible to see what can happen when a ton of passionate people get together, right? And obviously, with a leader like you, just amazing things happen. So, when you started volunteering for St. Baldrick's, did you have a particular goal in mind or a vision, or has it you know just evolved to what it is now?
Well, I think the primary goal was always about awareness. It's finding out the lack of funding, the lack of focus,
Mhm.
and I thought when I would donate to cancer research, it would naturally go there. So that was probably the first thing because I couldn't tell enough people. So it was trying to find new ways to grow the awareness of it because the more
Mhm.
people that knew about it, it just would snowball. And so each person you would tell 10 people. And so like for the first 3 or 4 years, it was more around trying to explain what it was. And then it got to the point that it was exciting as other people knew what it was. And our event started to become this thing that we ended up starting to see people come out for milestone knighting ceremonies.
Wow.
Like
Oh, yeah.
a few folks, like I think it was Damien, that asked if he could like be knighted for like the 7 year or 10 year piece. There, we'd see that because it's almost kind of circus in nature because it's really big. And part of the goal too was, you know, getting local TV to cover it was tough because there was so much stuff going on. So part of the goal
Right.
was make it too big to ignore. And that worked really
Mm.
well. I think at the peak, I did like 3 TV interviews in a week across all the 3 major
Wow.
networks. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, aside from some of the things that you've already shared, what would you say is the secret of your success as a leader for other volunteers?
Well, leader, lean into my ability to coerce people to find like inner strength, right? Part of it
Mhm.
is, there's a lot of different reasons people volunteer. There's a lot of different types of
Right.
volunteers. And just like in my work life, it's understanding what is motivating a person and what their goals are, because you can balance it out to be beneficial to both them and to the organization, and in the end, obviously, for the research funding that we need. So I think one of the most important thing was always being on the lookout for fresh volunteers. I think I got a reputation around year 5 or 6 that if people saw me come near them in a pub or a restaurant, they were worried I was going to talk them into something. They're like, "Yo, you're not going to talk me into anything." And by the time we were done, we had like a new marketing person for
Oh,
next
wow.
year or volunteer coordinator. But it's again, it's finding the right people. You need all of the volunteers, but you really need to
Yeah.
focus on the volunteers. They're going to reduce the workload on, I think, the organizers so they can do more in their space while still
Mhm.
leveraging. But delegation after recruitment. But again, the key thing is, finding out why they want to do it and make it very valuable to them at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that so much. I very much agree with you in regards to, finding what makes somebody tick and what motivates them to do something. That's amazing. How has volunteering for St. Baldrick's changed your life specifically in your career trajectory?
Well, I've always been someone that's fascinated by process and how we do things and how can we change it for it's my wife gets bugged by it a bit sometimes because everything I look at, I'm trying to figure out, well, why are they doing it like that? And so that led to a very successful career, first in consulting and then into leadership executive role, a large advertising agency, where we kind of helped grow and almost nearly double the size of that company. But part of it is the skills I needed to be able to convey each of those transformative things we tried to do. I was really good at doing that with small groups. We had like 17 business units. I could talk to one or two, no problem. But when I came to the point where I'd have to speak at company-wide events, I just couldn't do it. It would just be like panic mode. And part of that was a traditional thinking on how you present and what you say and why you say it. And so I got sent to training for it, walked out midway through because, again, they wanted me to figure out a script to rehearse and come back after lunch and present. And I just could not get over that initial fear of it. It was that first St. Baldrick's event where we sort of slapped it all together with some of my friends in advertising and AYSO, that as we went to kick off, I think it was the manager for the pub was doing like an introduction and then handed the mic to me, and I just started talking. And it's the same stuff that you tell everybody. And I learned the key is to really believe in what you're talking about, know the content, and let it flow naturally. And so that opened up doors to, in the role I went into, I was public speaking every week, sometimes 2 or 3 times, 4 times a week, 2 or 3 cities a week, audiences of 40 to 150 people. And it's like I could kind of go in there, and I found often it was like, we'd be planning on what that content would flow like the next day, but the key was knowing it and believing it. And I was able to overcome that. So that opened up quite a few doors for me at work, and it's allowed me to be quite successful. And I've seen a nice career path grow based on that.
That is incredible. Thank you for sharing that. So if you're just joining us today, we're talking with Mike Fiscus, a 15-year St. Baldrick's volunteer leader and innovator who has done some pretty unique things to garner support for St. Baldrick's. So Mike, was the growth that you've experienced evident to those around you as well as yourself, or did it make you see yourself differently?
Yeah, around me, I think it was like the tail end of my career at the advertising agency here in Detroit. That I came back and then I could, right? There was a big, giant project we've been trying to push through for like 2 years. And it was one of those leadership meetings where we had multiple business unit leads in a giant conference room and we had to pitch it. And I had insight that there was a major loss coming to the company, and I chose to exit early. And so I went in there and was able to like pitch something and sell it in as I was exiting the door, something I would have not been able to do before. But then I kind of like transferred or transitioned into a couple evolutions. And really, I think more people found it surprising that I couldn't do it, because I'd be helping other people as they're getting ready to go present and giving them some pointers on how to be more comfortable with it. And I would say, look, I used to be terrified of this. And they're like, they couldn't believe it. So it was one of those things, is it was like a light bulb that went on. And for me, I recognized it. I'd always been confident, because it's like, I never want to say anything so I fully understand what I'm talking about and how my words are going to be taken by that other person. But it's just the audience size that always kind of threw me. So I saw the change pretty immediately. So like that first year in that small event, that was nothing. But then, going up to a room that was over capacity.
Wow. Yeah.
And, it made me nervous, because I'd like wrote a speech, got ready to go up there, had to like climb over the crowds. It was almost like, you're in a mosh pit at a concert. And I taught the speech and just talked. It was again, it was like a light bulb that went off and really changed my career path.
Wow. That's awesome. What would you say has been the most important that you've thing that you've learned?
Well, part of that is always speak from the heart. It's always, if you're talking about something you believe in, that's going to be one of the most important elements. The other thing too is when you're speaking, understanding your audience. Part of what I learned when I would write those speeches, it was based on what I thought I should say to an audience. And then when I'm talking to the audience before I go on, then that would change, right? It's like I'd hear some story of why somebody was there for the first time. So
Right.
it's mostly like always speak from your heart, and absolutely rely on the volunteers around you to help make that happen.
Right, of course, yeah, absolutely. So in regards to the volunteers that you've recruited to be a part of this amazing experience, what kind of growth have you seen in them? Wow, and in the people that you've recruited to be a part of this?
Well, I think some of the core year-over-year things I love because when I was a child, I found mentors really important to me. So like an AYSO, got lots of great training on volunteer recruitment and retention. I
Mhm.
learned so much, and that evolved into me becoming a manager in a workspace, and eventually
Right,
managing 2 or 3 teams. A lot of the core things you do with a volunteer is similar to what you will do with an employee, but it is quite different. It's how do you help them develop? What do they want to get out of it? It's some of the folks just want to work and come in that day and do some stuff. That's great, but some folks might want to get some management skills because they want to get a promotion at work. So you put them in charge of a team, right? So either it's a barber coordinator or somebody that's managing the check-in stations or coordinating the whole thing, or when we talk about the kids side of it, high school kids wanting to get in there
mm,
and learn like some video production pieces or pieces, getting them cameras and rigs to record and helping them figure out how to edit, or helping them figure out how to do social media marketing. We've seen a
right,
lot of folks that will come back and talk about how that made them more confident and let them assume more of a leadership role at work. And
yeah,
part of that is what is it that you would like to take away to make you stronger? And I think that's where we get these volunteers each year. But the other thing I try to do each year is like reset it. We invite everyone in from scratch, no assumption that any volunteer is coming back in the same role, but
right,
make sure they know that they can take on something new. And we'd see shuffling, and we would then ideally have the previous person help mentor, and I would help mentor. And I think when you get all those pieces together, I think people get a lot out of it. And we've seen people go on to help with other events and go on and do other sort of charity events. But it's finding that pool of volunteers. I think most people want to find a way to do something good.
right.
It's not always presented to them, and you present them with the right opportunity. And I think that makes it easy.
Yeah, absolutely. That sounds very empowering for volunteers to get kind of that different feeling, that different skills with the different roles that are available to them. That's great. So as far as the businesses that you've worked with as part of your event, do you typically go for those that will engage their employees to gain some skills within their professional development, like in line with their volunteer opportunity?
We've done that, a bit. Early on, we did a partnership with a company that franchised a bunch of Buffalo Wild Wings, and so it was like working with some of their store managers in there and their staff, and they'd be on site that day. We had developer Lombardo Homes. They kind of like
Mhm.
jumped in, and one of their main folks became our top fundraiser for the year. And
Wow.
part of that is like teaching them, I guess, some new communication skills, right? Because we think about a core part of what like sales is for anything is how do you convey why somebody wants to do something or buy something, and so I think that's been helpful. But each year we try to get different organizations. Health Quest has been involved. They've been sending out teams, and we'll get somebody from that to coordinate that team. So
Yeah.
that's been helpful. But we've also had a lot of good luck with a lot of the civic organizations. You can't like discount those, whether it's like fire departments, those are always awesome. Washington Township Fire Department, Romeo Fire Department, great. But you're always on the lookout for new ones. We discovered this Chive group, which is kind of a national organization of folks that just want to do good and have fun, and those guys have been awesome in what they do. So it's
Yeah.
always on the lookout to find businesses or service organizations out there. But trying to talk to the Chivers about getting more involved, and they hosted their first event last year, which during the pandemic was awesome. They did a great job with it.
Yeah.
But I think part of it, them being involved with ours, helping them see how it works, giving them some behind the curtains insight, and then offering them emotional support that day.
Yeah.
Really, all I had to do was stand around and drink beer and say, "Great
Yeah.
job."
Absolutely. So, besides your obvious connection to the mission, your great empathy for children with cancer, why do you think St. Baldrick's, the St. Baldrick's volunteer experience is a valuable one?
Well, if you think about things you can volunteer for, there's so many out there. But when we think about what these children are going through, what the families are going through, that's
Mhm.
it's an easy thing to convey to people. But the first thing is not make it insurmountable for them to step in, because initially, like, yeah, I'll just give you a check. Where do I donate? I'm like, well, you should consider shaving your head. And I'll
Yeah,
usually like lead with that first, because they'll say, no, 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 I don't want to like shave my head. I'm like, well, you can volunteer in other ways, and that can be
right.
kind of like the fallback. But where I've been looked at as being coercive, is what I've said before, and convincing people to see their inner strengths. I think um, everyone that's done that has benefited from it, right? Because they did something good. We're seeing the impact on what the volunteers that the St. Baldrick's Foundation gives them the platform for are doing with new treatments
Mhm.
that we see each year. We can be super proud of that. Um, and I think uh, we want to make sure that, again, they get something out of it, and when they walk away, they have this sense of personal pride that each time St. Baldrick's posts like a new therapy or treatment, they can feel personally responsible that they had a hand in making that happen. So
Right.
it's it is, I think, profound until we can get to the point where every child can have a better outcome, and we can, right? It's just money and
Yeah,
time is what we need, and we want to have as little time
absolutely.
involved there as possible. So if we focus on the money, that's great. The awareness drives the money, and the volunteers make all of that happen. But we do put the importance on the volunteers as we do. I think we recognize the need to do that in year 3 or 4. So that's when we had to like do the big shavee schedule, making sure they're inviting all their family and friends in, and make it all about them. But they'll always say, "Well, I'm doing it for the kids," and it's like, but you know, making sure they're recognized. But the other thing we'll see is, I would notice every year, as soon as I like quietly turn on the event before I'd announce it, I'd have 2 or 3 people register that were net new to the
Wow.
program, that came across it because they were in the audience. And so
Yeah.
that's, and even though we haven't announced this year's event yet, I already have someone pinging me because they wanted
Yeah.
to shave. Even another person says, I want to volunteer. I shaved 2 years ago, and she's letting her hair grow out again. So she wants to help out wherever she can. So I'm just like, let's chat, because
It's amazing.
this year is an opportunity for not just an evolution of what we do, but a kind of little bit of reinvention at the same time. So I think there's some new opportunities for people to learn, definitely some new skills as we move forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Cannot agree more. I love that. So, Mike, before we wrap up, any special tidbits of advice for new VEOs or volunteers who might be having a little bit of a hard time kind of re-engaging their communities, or recruiting new folks to get involved?
Yeah, sure. Probably the most important thing after year one is start scoping your replacement, so that you
Mhm.
can spend 2 or 3 years to do that. That can be one of the most challenging things. But the other thing is understanding the different volunteer types, right? And prioritizing them and understanding what's in it for them. If we look at all the different job descriptions, like we have the core committee descriptions, those are pretty straightforward. Barber coordinator, treasurer, registrar, those are pretty straightforward. And you can translate those into, that on the treasurer side, our team at Romeo Accountants does an amazing job that day. But it's finding those volunteers, but always be recruiting new ones, and make sure those volunteers know, can you try that this year? And if you don't like it, you could try something new. So again, it's always be on the lookout. I mean, I think ideally a VEO run should be like maybe a 3 to 6 year thing, and then you step back into a supporting role. But it's good. I think you almost have to be focusing on a 50-50 ratio of new volunteers infusing new ideas, or bringing up old ideas that we couldn't do before, but they were great ideas, and with the new volunteers we could do them because we got new skills on the team. So I think it's an understanding of how volunteers work, and that's one of the things I'll credit AYSO. They have incredible training programs, again, for volunteer recruitment and development. And I'd love to help translate some of that stuff for the foundation and share that out, because that makes your job incredibly easy. You're just like the ringleader, and you're bringing a great Barbara coordinator like we've done, or a great treasurer, or a great registrar, and they do their thing, and you just savor it that day.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I mean, we can definitely chat offline about that. I love that idea, Mike. So thank you so much for being an inspiration to so many St. Baldrick's volunteers, to donors, to people in your community, and for working so hard for kids over the last 15 years. It truly has been a pleasure to speak with you today and to partake in this with you. And yeah, I mean, it's really inspiring to see everything that you've done.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Mike.
That's it. I probably talked too much already, so we'll just wrap it.
No. We always welcome it. And thank you to our audience today for tuning in to learn how you can be more like Mike. Please mark your calendar for February 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard, 1 p.m. Eastern, when we speak with pediatric oncologist Dr. Alex Wang, who's also a St. Baldrick's Knight Commander. Until then, thanks for helping give kids a lifetime.